Well, more than half of Australians now get most of their income from the government, whether by working for it, collecting welfare or milking subsidies. That's according to a report from the Centre for Independent Studies. Now, of course, we know the NDIS alone costs $52 billion, making us global leaders in bureaucratic benevolence. The childcare subsidies, well, they've doubled to $14 billion in just 7 years. And I don't have time to list all the freebies promised by the Albanese government in the lead up to the election. Although I should mention, of course, the very first thing this government did today was to forgive $16 billion in student debt.
I've got an update on this. We said it would be the first thing that we do, and today we're making it happen. We're introducing our legislation to cut your student debt by 20%. No application, no forms, just real help with your student debt.
But it gets more expensive than that. 80% of jobs in this country created in the past 2 years were in what's called the non-market centre. Those are jobs that rely heavily upon government subsidies, all of which means we're not so much a nation of workers anymore as we are, contestants in a taxpayer-funded lolly scramble. Joining me is former New South Wales Treasurer Michael Costa and GXO Strategies Director Cameron Milner. Michael, how did we end up in a situation where the majority of Australians are now dependent on the state?
Well, I think that report actually exaggerates the dependency ratio. Look, we do have a problem because, people taking subsidies for electricity and everything else is really, to me, not the real issue. The real issue is the fact that we have more and more people because of an ageing population. By the way, the intergenerational reports that I undertook, and Peter Costello did the first one, showed that this was clearly going to be the case in the time frame that we're currently in. For every 100 people that work, there's probably around 55 that are dependent on those 100 people, and that's going to get worse over time. Some of those people are young people, and of course a lot of them are ageing people, older people that are part of the ageing population. The issue for me is the underlying productivity. How do you fund and keep a tax base in place that can actually support all of this? And the answer is you can't. And that's the challenge we face. And that's why the Treasurer is scrambling around with, silly things like the unrealised capital gains tax to try and, fill that hole. But you're right, governments have used subsidies and handouts to shore up their electoral position. And that's what you're seeing with the HEX arrangements, the childcare arrangements, and also the abuse in the NDIS. So, yeah, we've got a major problem. And nobody's really addressing the core. And the core is how do we get our productivity up and get a tax system that works for Australians rather than forces them into dependency.
Well, you bring me neatly to my next question. Cameron, this is obviously not sustainable, but how do you ever wind back a system that requires a large number of Australians to vote against their own personal interests?
Well, that's the trap, isn't it? That's the big trap that the left like to put on Australian politics, which is, if you're getting a handout, you can't possibly vote against it. The reality is that we are in a situation with too much debt, not enough productivity. And Michael, you're exactly right. We need to increase productivity in this nation. But too many people are eligible for too much care. That's the reality. I wouldn't begrudge anyone on aged care. They're paid their taxes all their life. They've got a pension and an aged care system, so I wouldn't touch that. But NDIS, there are too many people trying to get eligible for that. There are too many children on NDIS who just need to be taught properly at school. And there's too many people in middle-class welfare with their handout for childcare. It's a mendicant state, and we can't afford it.
Well, if the government wants to get spending under control, here's an idea. They could start by winding back our commitment to net zero by 2050. That's a policy that's costing us a bomb for zero gain. National's big hitters, Barnaby Joyce and Michael McCormack, have seemingly teamed up in an effort to repeal net zero. Barnaby Joyce insists net zero is a crazy idea. Here he is.
The head of the serpent on this is net zero. It's trying to attain this crazy idea that Australia by itself, because remember, China's not doing this, India's not doing it. So what's the point of us doing this if the rest of the majority of the world, the majority of the economies of the world are not doing it?
Now, he's going to introduce a private member's bill to scrap net zero, and McCormack says that he will vote for Joyce's bill, declaring the push for net zero has been damaging for rural communities. On top of that, he told Sky News earlier today that the majority of National's MPs agree with him.
Do you think a majority of your party room colleagues agree with Barnaby and you
I'd like to think so.
on repealing net
Time will
zero?
tell. I'd like to think so.
Michael Costa, the bill that Barnaby moves will fail because no one from Labor certainly will back it, but it puts the argument about net zero front and centre for the coalition parties, doesn't it?
Well, look, I don't even think that bill will make it into the parliament. I mean, there's a whole process that you've got to go through before you even get it discussed. So don't be surprised that doesn't happen. But look, I said from the moment the coalition lost the elections that the Nationals ought to take this very position. I mean, they held all their seats and they ran with a policy against net zero. So I think that's the right decision for them. As for the Liberal Party, I can't see any way they're going to get themselves out of net zero, given particularly the leadership. Susan Lay's from the left. You've got people like Matt Green, as we used to call him. Matt Keane is heading up the Climate Change Authority, and he's a factional colleague of the Susan Lee and the left. So I don't see anything happening in that area. It's going to lead to the deindustrialisation of Australia. There's no doubt about that. When you look at that policy, plus the IR changes, the patent bargaining that's come back in, and now this unrealised capital gains mess, you're going to find a situation where nobody's going to invest in this country.
Let me just stay on the net zero issue for a moment, because I'm trying to figure out where all of our leaders in the coalition are going to land. Nationals leader David Littleproud, he threw fuel on the fire today, not declaring his position, but at the same time saying net zero was, quote, impossible. He told journalists he's not made up his mind, but he said net zero was, and I quote, an ideology that is not going to sustain an energy grid. Cameron, firstly, is he right? And having said that, he couldn't possibly go to the next election supporting net zero, could he?
No, and I think Michael's point is right. I mean, the Nationals held all their seats and actually had a sensible position on climate change. I mean, farmers know that the climate is changing. It's how we get there. It's whether you actually have a strict net zero by 2050, policies that the government's not even going to keep. We're going to miss our 2030 target. We're going to impose an even higher 2035 target in a hope that we're going to get there. We're missing these targets even as we're cruelling our own economy to do it. The reality is that we aren't making the transition work in time. It's costing us more and more than it should. Grid transmission itself is costing as well. We need to actually get sensible about the rate of change, the rate of transition, because renewables have got a place, nuclear's got a place. And at the end of the day, we actually need to have a better energy mix. And to your point, Michael and James, we need to bring down the cost of doing business in Australia so we continue to make things in Australia.
OK, so if the Nationals Party move away from net zero and say, look, we can't support that, what does that mean for the coalition? If the Nationals ditch net zero, how do they walk hand in hand with their Liberal partners? Michael, the coalition parties could differ on various policies, sure, but I would have thought net zero, because it impacts absolutely every area of life, that's not something you can simply agree to disagree on, is it?
I think you can, and I think that's where it'll end up, because I cannot see the Liberal Party walking away from net zero. Look, they've got the problem of the Teals, of course, and you've got a left-wing leader of the Liberal Party. You've got a majority, probably left-wing caucus of the Liberal Party to get her up, and you've got the pressure of the Teals. So I can't see them walking away from net zero. What they could do, I suppose, is run an argument, as Cameron just said, that you slow down the pace of it. But even that, I think, is too far for them to go, given the political pressures they face in those Teal seats. So I think you're going to find a difference of position. It's not the first time they've had differences of position on specific issues. So I can see a muddling through is probably the way they're going to go.
Well, Cameron, the trouble I have with Susan Lee is she seems to be saying two contradictory things. She has said that she believes in bringing down emissions. She also said she believes in cheap, reliable energy. Well, aren't those two things in direct conflict that's playing out right before our eyes?
They needn't be, because other European economies, 19 of the 20 G20 nations have got nuclear power. Now, the problem for nuclear power is that Labor's weaponised that, and Labor's got an ideological objection to it. So that's a problem in terms of our energy mix. But no, I mean, the mix of gas and renewables should actually provide cheap, reliable power across the 24 hours we need. The problem with coal, and I'm a big endorser of coal, is that no one's investing in it. So our generation capacity is getting older and older, and there is no new money going into new generators. It's going towards gas and renewables. So that's got to be the mix, I think, James, of where we go for energy in the future.
Okay, it'll be fascinating to see how they resolve those conflicts within the coalition.